talk about, Clint, the experience you've had with your dogs out here and just everything that you've seen that you've been impressed with.
Well, I met Clint Johnson 5 years ago. I was having lunch with J.D. Simpson and telling him that I'd about lost interest in duck hunting, and he said what I needed was a new retriever. And he said, I know a guy that's got some of the best dogs in the country. You ought to call him. So I called Clint Johnson. He was in Colorado. I was in Little Rock. And I told him I wanted a 4-year-old finished female. And he said, well, I've got just the dog for you. And when he got back to Little Rock, he called me. And I went out and looked at what he had, and he sold me a 1-year-old male. And that began a 5-year relationship. And one more thing, the dog that I bought from him, this one right here, couldn't swim a lick. But I bought him anyway, and I've never regretted it. And the dog stays mostly at Clint's. I take him home on the weekends when my wife absolutely requires it. And I come out and we work the dogs from time to time. This black dog I only own a half interest in with Mrs. Johnson. And he's brand new, 2 years old, and depending on who you're talking to is how I got a half interest. I say the story goes that Clint looked at the dog and said, why don't you buy a half interest in that dog? And I said, okay. His version is I looked at the dog and said, Clint, would you sell me a half interest in the dog? He said, well, it's Shauna's dog to start with, and she immediately said, but he sells every dog I've ever had. So Shauna and I own this dog right here. He's 2 years old. He knows so much about the psychology of the dogs. And he always says that a happy dog is a dog that you can train. And I guarantee you, if you go to his kennel, that's all you're going to see is happy dogs. They like each other, they like you, and they really love what they're doing.
That was absolutely perfect.
So what we're going to do is throw one out there, have another one hit the water, and you'll see Boss doesn't pay any attention to it or the other dog. Go ahead, Shauna. You'll watch Pete here as well. He's just a 2-year-old dog, but he's not going to interfere with this other dog doing his work. If you're out there hunting, that's the last thing you need. And you'll watch them work together here. One will go for one, one will go for the other. Neither one interferes. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing what these dogs are capable of learning. And there's no way we could force them to do that. We just couldn't sit down and explain it to them. We can't put it in a video or a text. All we can do is show them over and over that that's how they get what they want. And they don't mind doing it. They don't mind doing anything as long as they can get what they want out of it. I like this little guy.